All righty. So yes, so the first question is, how much money do you need from donors to accomplish your goals?
I think it might be even better to start with your major sources of revenue.
Okay.
Kind of that last question you answered, because I think that will provide some. I think that going over the overall budget as a context, and then kind of digging into some of the more specific line items like donor revenue or donations or private fundraising. Let's start at the macro and we'll get down into the micro.
Okay.
So if you look at our budget in terms of the different line items for revenue, what you're going to see, and I'm also probably going to answer another one of your questions in this explanation. We think of our organization as a public-private partnership, right? And that can mean a lot of different things in terms of how we partner, how we bring in outside resources. But I also think it means something pretty significant in terms of funding, because we like to say that we rest on like a three-legged stool or braided funding or diversified funding. You know, we call it a lot of different things. But in essence, what we're saying is I feel that we are in a very good financial position in that we are not overly reliant on any one main revenue source. And I know, because we are part of a larger network within the state and nationally in my conversations with other EDs, that, you know, affiliates are of course, like any nonprofits, all over the place with that. But that kind of diversified revenue is something that's a place we all want to be in, right? And some of us are further along than others. So when you talk about what are the legs of our stool on which we rest, right? So one of them is going to be our funding from the state. So the state legislature appropriates funding for communities and schools programs in Texas. And that is funneled to us through the Texas Education Agency. So as you can imagine, on a side note, this is a very important time for us right now because the legislature is getting ready to meet, and they will be determining the state budget for the next 2 years. And a piece of that will be how much are they setting aside for the communities and schools programs in Texas. So we are all holding our breath. Yeah, we're all kind of holding our breath because COVID has created a strain on our state's economy, and we are very hopeful that we'll at the very least be able to maintain our existing level of funding. But as you said, if we were to see a percentage decrease to that, 10%, 20%, we have to always be thinking about how could we adjust things elsewhere to make up that loss. So that's one of the main, that's a leg of our stool, is our state funding through the legislature and through TEA. The second piece are fees for service. So those are the fees that our school district partners are paying for us to place social workers on their campuses full time. We are currently partnered with 10 school districts throughout Greater Tarrant County. And those districts sign a contract with us, and our affiliate is currently charging a fee of $42,000 per social worker. So if you look at all the CIS affiliates, some charge more, and those tend to be, now we're one of the largest affiliates in the state, right? We're in the top 5 in the state of Texas. So everything's different here. Cost of living, salaries, the amount we can charge to school districts, all of it's higher. But there are affiliates that charge substantially less. And there are some like Houston and Austin and San Antonio that charge a little bit more. But we are currently at $42,000. And so every school district we partner with is paying $42,000 times however many social workers we place. And they pay that each year. And every year we renew those contracts. So that's another chunk of our revenue, school fees. And then we have our private fundraising. And our private fundraising raises about 1.6 million each year. So right away, you're almost looking at a third, and a third, right? So you probably got about, I don't even know that TEA makes up a full third, but I don't have the budget right in front of me to do the math, but think of it like a balance between state funding, school fee funding, and our private fundraising. So in just the private fundraising alone, right now, their goal is 1.6 this fiscal year. And that goes up a little bit every year for how much we are asking our development team to raise. And again, if you just look at that slice, there's a lot of diverse funding within that slice. So that 1.6 is made up of probably 45 different foundations and trusts and individual households who give. In a non-COVID world, we have 2 in-person special events a year: our spring luncheon, our fall gala, your mailed appeals, your campaigns, all of that gets to that 1.6. Now, here's where we get even more interesting in terms of the health of CIS of Greater Tarrant County. So a goal of our board years ago was to get our organization to a 6-month operating reserve. So we have, our checking account, of course, we have a money market investment account, and then we have we have a money market account, and then we have an investment account where the portfolio percentage is higher in stocks than bonds, all that kind of thing. Those kind of 3 accounts together make up our operating reserve. And we have, I think we're at let's just say we're at 6 months. I think we might even be like 6.5 or 6.7 months of an operating reserve. So that's nice. That helps us sleep better at night, right? Because it means that if something big were to happen that impacted any one piece of that revenue pie, we have the reserves to pull from if we need it. Now that, if you look at our budget, that's not a piece of the line items. That's just kind of what we have over here in savings, right? Mm-hmm. But a piece of our revenue on our budget is we also have a private foundation that's something that I established. I've been here 9 years, and the first 5, I was the vice president of development, and there was no foundation at that time for CIS Greater Tarrant County. And so now separately we have, it's called the Mike Steele Foundation. Mike Steele was my boss and he was the first CEO of CIS Greater Tarrant County. He was there for 25 years. And so it's a Mike Steele Foundation for communities and schools. And it's just a little bit, it's not like a university that has like $100 million endowment or anything like that. But we are at just over 2 million now in the endowment. And so it is putting out some annual revenue for us. Mm-hmm. So every year, if you look in our budget, now there's a revenue line item for the Mike Steele Foundation, because that's that piece that it's paying out to the organization. We did not, first we just fundraised for it, and our board said we would not take anything out of it until it got to 1 million. And now it's a little over 2. And so we are, right now it's providing like 55,000 a year or something like that. But still, that's nice. That's like a grant.
Yes. This is, you've answered the breadth basically and the depth of what I was hoping to accomplish. When we developed the questions, we're just trying to figure it out. But I think you've really answered everything. And
well, let me, I did jot down some key words. Let me try to hit on some of those and make sure I'm getting to it. You asked about 3 to 5 years. I don't know if I sent you our strategic plan that is for 2020 through 2023, but I'm happy to do that. It's pretty interesting, I think. If you look at the funding piece of it, what you will find is we've accomplished the 6-month reserve we came to the strategic planning process most recently, having already had a 6-month reserve. We've already established an endowment. So oddly enough, when we talk about our financial goals for the next 3 to 5 years, they're less focused on like fundraising. I mean, they are a little bit, but the main focus is salaries for our social workers. So what we're trying to do, we identified a gap, our strategic planning committee, and we tried to really pick that apart. When the majority of the social workers that leave CIS leave to take school district social work jobs. So some of the school districts have their own teams, right, of social workers. And if they leave us and they're making 40,000 here and they go to work for Fort Worth ISD, they're going to go there and immediately make like 51 or 52. So what we did is we said, okay, what is the pay gap? But then we have to back out the fact we provide 100% of like our employees' benefits for medical, dental, and vision. They do not pay anything toward their premium, which that's kind of rare.
Yes. So
nice.
in complete transparency, I looked at who our school social workers are, and I work directly with them, and we have a great partnership. And 2 of them came from CIS. And one of them was like, you really, in talking about school and stuff and what this semester is going to look like, both of them recommended your amazing agency. And when I asked them, you love what you're doing here, it's very different work than what they were doing at CIS. And so I did ask them why, and they both said it was the salary. And so
yeah.
And that was after, speaking. And I mean, like I said, in complete transparency, when I read your threat, I thought, oh, I need to tell her the next time I speak, because I don't want you to, it's never intentional for a school district to take social workers from CIS, right? But it is, I think, just the natural pot of social workers to apply to school districts that we realize are from other districts, from CIS. And so it's just, my perspective of it is they have amazing social workers, that come and apply and interview for us. And then to see your perspective and listen as a thread, I thought, oh, yes, I can see how that can happen. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that, since it came up, and I was going to mention it anyway, that yes, we are 2 recipients we're recipients of 2 of your CIS trained social workers.
Yes. So what we've done over the last probably 2 or 3 years is, and this is what's going to continue over the next 3 to 5. Now, this strategic plan was finalized right before COVID hit, right? So that was devastating to us as an organization. And I'm not giving that up, of course, but it definitely pushed pause on things, because if you look at our strategic plan, I can send it to you. We ran all these financial scenarios of what it might look like for us to try to close not 100% of that pay gap between us and school district pay. And the reason for that is, 1, we're trying to actually have a goal that's financially feasible. But 2, this is where you get into the climate surveys and the feedback. And you have to look at the whole picture. Why do people stay and why do people go, right? And then you have to look at the value of our benefits package versus what the school districts, if they leave us and they go make 10,000, but they have to pay $400 a month toward their benefits, that's not a net gain of 10,000 a year, right? So we did all that. We ran these financial scenarios to say, okay, if we tried to close 70% of that pay gap in 3 years' time, what do we need to do in terms of increasing school fees? What do we need to do in terms of, basically, how do we fund that? So you see that the fundraising goals and the school fees are strategically stepped up over the next couple of years. And the whole point of that is to be able to pay social workers more and increase staff retention. So I hope that answers kind of in terms of financial goals over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yes, and I would love if you would send me the strategic plan. And like I said, everything is confidential. I some organizations and some students in the class have asked for a confidentiality agreement. We didn't do that, but I am welcome to retroactively sign anything that you'd like. But essentially, everything
I
that
will
we're
trust
talking about
you,
is
Blanca.
confidential. It is all confidential, regardless.
I'm sure I'm sure I should. A smart person would have you sign something, but I'm just going to trust that our conversations and these documents will remain confidential.
Absolutely. And that's my commitment. As I mentioned it from the start, it will always be. Plus, I am a social worker. And so I have a code of ethics, just like you, just like everybody else.
Yes.
We're all social workers. But I just wanted to make sure that you knew that. And then I'm just really curious about, I did not find this, maybe I might have missed it on your website, but what other ways can donors help if they can't do financial contributions? So do you accept, like, I'm assuming volunteers, but in-kind donations of any sort, or?
Yes, for sure. And I just forwarded you the strategic plan, so hopefully that comes through. I kind of feel like it's going to be one of those days. Like if I'm going to do it, I need to just go ahead and do it now.
I understand.
Obviously, yes, in-kind donations are helpful. I think the general community can always help advocate for CIS. And that the term advocate is something people throw around a lot loosely, but it's kind of hard to know, what does that mean? Who do I advocate to? Do I go stand out and beat on a pan in my front yard and say, hear ye, CIS is a great organization? I mean, what does that mean? And so it's the legislature is about to meet. Everybody right now could be like reaching out to their representatives and making the case for why communities and schools, as the largest provider of student behavioral and social emotional supports in the state, which we are, why it's so critical right now to maintain our funding through the legislature. That is a real and practical thing that people can do that doesn't cost anything, except a phone call or an email. When we are having special events, especially our fall fundraiser, and this is so common with nonprofits that have galas and things, we typically have an auction. So, we're always looking for like businesses or donors, especially a donor that has like a vacation house somewhere or something like that they can help us put together desirable packages to help us raise money. We have 3 food distributions a year for our families, and those are specifically right before the major holidays, right before Thanksgiving, right before winter break, and right before spring break, because so many of our kids eat breakfast and lunch at least at school, and we want to make sure we're supplementing the family's food supply over those holiday breaks. So we pack hundreds of food bags. So one, there's a volunteer opportunity there. Now, we did it all ourselves this year because we didn't want outside people in our central office. But I enjoy that. I like rolling up my sleeves and sweating and doing that kind of thing. I get tired of budgets all the time. So, but in a non-COVID year, it's nice to have volunteers come pack those food bags and even maybe help deliver them to the schools. And then the social workers, like give them out to the families. But also, we often will find some donors or even companies that will help underwrite the cost of those food purchases, because we're out there buying that food in bulk, right? So we set aside some of our budget every year for the 3 food distributions. But of course, if we can find organizations willing to purchase those on our behalf or give a contribution to underwrite the cost of, 2,000 cans of corn, then that's great. We'll put that money toward other things. And then we do love over the summer or like late spring, early summer, to find groups that will do backpack and school supply drives for us so that we can give out backpacks and school supplies to the kiddos before they start a new school year. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, that is it. Yes. And I, I, I would assume that these partnerships are ones like for the underwriting of the food or the backpacks and school supplies. They are just those partnerships that have been working with you, and they know and value what you all do, because CIS has been around for a long time and has proven. So I feel that I have all the information. So my next steps is going to be to develop that. It's partially developed anyway because of my research is on
Right.
racism in schools, and so I'm going to probably focus a little bit more on inclusion and diversity, which mine is more on anti-racist practices. Either way, I should get that to you probably towards the end of next week at the latest. I'll be writing a lot this my spring breaks next week, so I'm plan to not travel. I have a lot of writing to do, but I can get that to you. That's more my passion. Reading and the research and writing is not, but it's okay. And and so then I will send that to you, and then you just let me know when you think is a good time to have it a go. And
Yes.
I'll continue touching base with you. There might just I believe after the survey, I may have some questions about human capital. So how do you recruit your social workers and things like that? And I think that can be easily answered through a text or an email. It's not something that that we have to meet again. But we will meet again after we survey and go over the results.
That sounds good. And before I let you go, did you want to take a moment to hear about what we're doing with our Brave Spaces training?
Yes, I highlighted that in my notes, and because we have not talked about that. So yes, please, I love that.
Okay,
Would
so
you like me to? I'll stop recording now.
you can record. You might want to go
Okay.
back and listen to it.
Perfect.
Girl, I'm on record with all this now. You might as well just record. So understanding that the majority of the children that we serve, the majority of the children that our affiliate is serving in the greater Tarrant County area are Black and Hispanic Latinx students, right? And so they're not, I mean, we serve white children too, of course, but I think they make up less than 20% now of the population that we serve. So first of all, if you fill a room with all of our social workers, you'll see that the social workers are very diverse and very reflective of the communities that we serve. That's the first point. That diversity really, and that goes up to the supervisor level. Like our master level social workers, a lot of them are program managers in the schools, but we have a small team of supervisors that are LMSWs who supervise 6 to 8 campuses, right? They used to work directly in the schools. They've been promoted up and now they're supervisors. That is also a very diverse group, which is amazing. The diversity there in terms of our leadership team seems to stop at that level. And then me and the 6 ladies who report to me are all white. So that was a moment of pause, I think, for me in this whole journey, right? This whole thing is just, I'm going to like word vomit on you, just a journey. So that's one observation I have made internally. Next, for our board, we have 23 board members. And I think I had mentioned 2 are Black, 1 Hispanic. We are about to vote on another board member, and I'm very excited. Her name is Dr. Danyata Harrell, and she is in a leadership role in Fort Worth ISD. I think that's going to be awesome. She also happens to be African American, but everybody else is white. So in terms of upper leadership of our organization, the upper leadership up through our board does not reflect the populations that we serve in the way that I feel like we should, right? So that's a goal, is to accomplish that. And that's also in our strategic plan over the next 3 to 5 years. But to me, that I don't even know how to say this. So pardon me while I take some time to ramble and try to get this all out. So I feel like our students work in a system that's broken, right? I don't believe that they are living in their day-to-day lives or in the school system in a system that is set up for their success. And historically in our country, that is not how our country was set up, right? For non-whites to be successful. So I think that there is a big gap in understanding that in probably our upper leadership and through our board. Now, it's not fair to say that that's true of everybody or all of our board members, because it's absolutely not true. I've had so many conversations now. There are board members who are so woke, and there are some that are so blind. And so there was a need, right? A great need for our organization at all levels to, I feel like, go on this journey together. And when I say, what is this journey? Well, a piece of that for me has been to bring a training to our organization that's hard. It's hard conversations. It's not a one-day training. The one that we picked was called Moving from Safe Spaces to Brave Spaces. And it's actually being led by Jacinto Ramos Jr., who is the president of the Fort Worth ISD Board of Trustees. And he is a powerhouse individual in the Fort Worth community, specifically in the Hispanic community. And he mobilized that community to support him. And now he's in these fabulous leadership roles within Fort Worth, right? But we've brought him in because he does have a consulting firm on the side, and he provides this training, and it's tough. And we are all doing it. And I got the board's approval for all staff. It's a mandatory training, whether you like it or not. And our board, now it's a 16-hour training. And so for our social workers, we've had to spread that out, right? So that we're not pulling them off their campuses too much, like in any 1 week or 1 month. So what we did was we structured that as 4 afternoons, one in January, one in February, March, and April. So we've had 2, and we have 2 more left, and they're 4 hours each. So it's a whole afternoon. I wanted so badly for it to be an in-person training, but we planned this right before COVID hit. And then at some point I was like, we can wait forever to do this thing, or we can just get on Zoom and do it. So I'm tired of kicking the can down the road. So we just did it. And, it's on Zoom, but it's still like from the very first time, I mean, people were sharing things that were so deeply personal. We're always obviously trying to tie it back to the work. Like why are all these experiences and these realizations relevant to the work that you're doing with your children? And why are they relevant in terms of helping to shape or reshape an educational system where there are a lot of systemic problems? And we're saying we're trying to help these kids be successful, but if you only stop with food, clothing, shelter, and paying the rent, you're not really getting to a lot of the systemic issues that create barriers for these kids. So we're trying to educate ourselves as an organization about what those issues are, how should that inform our work, and what is the role? And this isn't just a CIS Tarrant County thing. This is a conversation we're having as a state and a national network. We are looking at ourselves and saying, we are embedded in the school system. We have a voice as an organization if we recognize that the system is broken, and we start looking at all the statistics about how, for example, Black female teens. This is stats we pulled out of our schools in partnership with a TCU. Sorry, I'm all over the place now. Yeah. We have a research partnership with the TCU School of Social Work, and Dr. Samantha Bates looked at all of our data over the last year, and she said, are you aware that the Black teens in the schools that you serve are being referred for disciplinary action 4 times greater than their white female counterparts who are being referred to the mental health supports? So we have behaviors, and the Black girls go to into school suspension, and the white girls go get mental health counseling. So we're trying to pull out those nuggets and put those in front of also our board and say, we need to be asking the hard questions about why this happens. And what is CIS's role to try to bring that to light and hopefully change that over time. I'm glad you're getting this on the recording. So that is the purpose.
It's caused chills all over my skin. I have goosebumps because that is where the equity issues come.
I wish I had the curriculum in front of me to go over the topics with you, because they will all resonate with you because of the work that you are already doing. We talk about white privilege. We talk about unlearning and relearning our history. We talk about why in our schools are we only taught a certain version of our country's history, when really a lot of the things that are key pieces of information that have led us to the situation we have today are conveniently left out. Why do we talk about all the white people in our country who have made America what it is, but why don't we also have this? And so Cinto will say, hey, like, y'all name me 10 Hispanic or Latino people who have been instrumental in shaping our country, or Black people who are not athletes. Ready, go. And it's like, now, so we could talk about this for another hour, but I think, so that's a big focus, is relearning relevant history about policies, practices, and everything that has led us to the huge disparities that we have now between different communities. And then what can we do? Eventually, at the end of all this, he's going to be trying to really push us from moving from being non-racist to anti-racist. What does that mean? And then how is that relevant for our role as CIS in the community? I'm very excited about it. If you can't tell, we are surveying our staff members along the way, and white, Black, brown, I don't care, purple, everybody is in a different place with this. Because if you had asked me in my ignorance how I thought staff would respond, I would have told you the white people are going to struggle because this stuff is hard to hear, and our Black and brown staff members are going to love it. And in fact, it's all over the place. You've got some of us white people who are so passionate about spreading this message, and then you have others that are like, this is so offensive to me. I feel shamed for being white. I feel like I'm being told I'm part of the problem and all of this. But then you also we've actually had a couple of like Black staff members specifically who I think the discussions that we're having are tapping into perhaps some trauma that they've experienced around this early on. And it's very hard for them to engage. So we're trying to really be sensitive about meeting people where they are. And one of the agreements, we always go back to, what are our agreements in this? And one of them is acceptance of non-closure. And that is a hard one for me, because if you're a person who wants to debate and somebody has to win and somebody has to lose, somebody's right and somebody's wrong. And Cinto's like, not on this journey. We all are going to hear, we are all going to learn, but there are going to be people, you have to accept non-closure. They may never get there, and you have to be okay with that. And I'm like, okay, I've talked your ear off. Why don't you take
listen to you all day? I think that it's necessary, absolutely necessary. And it's most necessary when it comes to schools, because your social workers, our social workers, every social worker who is in a school is facing that, the inequity, the disproportionality, and systemic racist practices that were based on white colonialist systems that have continued since school began. I mean, school wasn't even for anyone that wasn't, because we have to include Indigenous people. Like, it wasn't even considered for anyone who was non-European background when our system was developed. So there's so much that still continues. and the disproportionate health disparities, all of that is based on, unfortunately, it's based on these systems that are easily they just continue. And so people might walk away from this training and their lives might be changed completely, or they might, dig in harder and dig their heels in and not move. Yet they can't deny that it's been brought to their attention. And sometimes that's where the non-closure comes. Like it's at least brought to your attention, and no one can ever walk away from this training as if they haven't been at least exposed to that. I can't wait to ask my team if they could name. I'm still stuck trying to list 10 Latinos, and I have probably quite a few, and probably less women, less Latinas. And so I bet you the current millennial Latinxers would be able to list a few more, but I can't wait to ask that question. And
yes, and Black non-athletes.
Yes,
and I think he also would prefer, basically what he's saying is, don't just name people who are in pop culture, no athletes, no musicians, really try to, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know.
My husband's African American.
This is the part I should ask you.
Yes, I was just going to say that my husband has been.
This is the part maybe you should not record.
Okay, stopping right now.